The off season is here, and free agency season and the hot stove season are amongst us. And we're wondering, what are the Cubs going to do to improve on that 83 and 79 team mark that they've established the last 2 years? Well, one thing that we do know is that we shouldn't expect the Cubs to do a whole lot. I want to talk about why they're telling us that right now, because it really makes no strategic sense unless maybe you're trying to trick everybody. And who knows? We're going to talk about it right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe, thumbs up. Cardinals fans, don't worry about this. Cubs fans, you can do more than one thing at a time. Hit that bell so you know when we're going. Let's get this party started. Peace, everybody. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Mick Gillespie here at Broadcaster Mick on the socials, and it is a pleasure to talk to you guys today about Cubs baseball. And there's a few things I want to talk about. But the first thing I want to talk about right out of the chute is, why are we tempering expectations on off-season free agency, or the off-season and free agency, however you want to word it? I don't understand this. Even if you're not planning on signing any of these big-time guys, why wouldn't you just act like you're thinking about it? Why wouldn't you just put yourself in the mix just to not send off the signals that you're having financial problems, or you don't trust your front office, or, you're satisfied with a roster that is, it's not bad, but it's not good. It's a playoff list roster, and they haven't won a playoff game in a long time. I don't understand it. I look at the roster and I go, okay, well, I got no trade clause on Happ. I got no trade clause on Suzuki. Now I got Bellinger back, so I get it, right? What about Tachman? What are you going to do with Pete Crow Armstrong? Now we're starting to hear that maybe Owen Casey, you trade him to Toronto, who would love to have him as a prodigal son of the country of Canada. So I get that. And he would be like the perfect guy to build your organization around. The shame is that he would be a guy that the Cubs could build their organization around as well. But you made all these deals, and then you signed all these guys, and now you have like a collision where you've rushed all your guys up through the minor leagues and they're in AAA, but there's nowhere for them to go on the big league roster unless you make trades. And we're hearing that, the Cubs are kicking the tires on some deals, which would send off some of their big-time prospects, and then in return, they would obviously need to get pitching because they don't have room for anybody else. They got the entire except catcher, right? And I want to talk about catching in a second, but the strategy of it makes no sense to me. I get like tempering expectations internally. Like, you may be Jed Hoyer and you go to your staff and you tell Carter Hawkins and you tell, the rest of the group, you're like, hey, look, I talked to Tom, I talked to Crane. We're not going to spend that much money this year. They're not comfortable going out and allowing me to make another deal like Dansby Swanson, because he's making $177 million and he's a guy that hits at the bottom of the lineup. And that's, for us, a big deal. Now, where I'm the Cubs, and I've said this before, I've always been a guy who understands and appreciates development, the organization, kind of moving guys up through the system, building internally, doing it the way that the Cardinals did it forever. And maybe they're not so successful anymore, but, for years and years and years, they would develop their own guys, bring them up or whatever, right? It felt like the Cubs made a lot of mistakes with signings. And then, and Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer fall in love with guys like Jason Hayward and Dansby Swanson, and they got burned by Hayward, and who knows what's going to happen with Swanson. But last year he was awful for the money that he was getting, and maybe with a 1-year deal they don't feel comfortable. But I'm going back to the strategic part of it. Why not just bluff everybody? like you're playing poker. You're into poker, you don't go, well, you know what? I'm not putting a whole lot of money in unless you're just trying to bluff everybody. Sometimes you act like you're putting it in and you don't. Sometimes you put it in and you kind of surprise everybody with that, or that's the way that it kind of works. So I'm wondering if there could be a little showmanship in this, but I don't feel like there is. I really feel like the Cubs genuinely don't plan on spending any money, or at least big money. You're talking about two big time pitchers here that teams are going to go out. They're going to spend a lot of money for. We figured Corbin Burns would be a guy that the Cubs would love to have. Rohei Sasaki's coming over from Japan. He's been a superstar over there. And one thing that we figured out is that these guys are coming over from Japan and they're great. I mean, they're coming in and they're be amongst the best players in baseball coming over from Japan. And we've seen that with, the Japanese players that the Cubs have. And it would be great to have, another great player from Japan. But they're going to make a lot of money. That's the case now. And so the Cubs probably aren't going to be in the mix for either one of these guys. I would love to see the Cubs get a right-handed ace somewhere at the top of the rotation. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Now, what about Juan Soto? How about the Dodgers trying to throw a monkey wrench in this? Can you imagine them going out and spending another $700 million on a player? Or 600, 500 and something to add with that already great team that they have? They're going all in. And I feel like the Cubs need to go all in. And a lot of it has to do with the White Sox. And I'm telling you, I would push the White Sox right out of the city. Get them on out. You want to go to Nashville? We're going to help you pack your bags, because not only are you guys going to stink, we're going to crush. But that's just not that doesn't seem like it's the mentality. And who knows, maybe they don't have the resources to do that, with all of the stuff that they've bought and paid for, and buildings and, and everything around the stadium. And maybe they're still paying for that. Who knows what, maybe they don't feel comfortable with this front office spending big money, when, they're probably looking at Dansby Swanson going, here's an eighth batter that we're paying $177 million for. We got a guy in the minor leagues that we could probably put in there and spend not even $1 million on to play and get, maybe not as good, but not that far off production. Right. So I'm just curious. I would not be surprised, though, if we look back and go, okay, these guys were playing, they were bluffing, but I just don't get the feel on that. Why? Because why would you say it if you were planning on doing that? It just wouldn't make sense to do it and tell us that you're not going to do it and then go in and do it, unless you were, maybe you were trying to throw a curveball. But the Cubs are saying that they're going to be out. They're tempering the off-season expectations and free agency, mid-level guys. Does that mean we get another Jameson Taillon where we're kind of like, man, this guy, 1 year he was not so good. Last year he was okay. He was better than average. Instead of going out and getting, like a guy like Burns that you put at the top of your rotation and you ride, and you get serious about winning when you get pitching like that. You get the elite guys. All right, we're going to talk catching. That's a spot that the Cubs actually have flexibility with. What are they going to do there? I thought Miguel Amaya played really well down the stretch. Didn't know he had it in him. Never was a big fan of his game, like him as a person, but he showed me something. I think he showed you guys something too. Like, the guy's not that bad. So maybe he sticks around, but I don't think he's an everyday guy. To me, you're not going to win a World Series with him behind the plate, but he could be a good backup. So what does that mean if you're the Cubs? I mean, do you go out there, or what about this guy, Moises Ballesteros? The question that a lot of people have about Ballesteros is, can he catch every day? And the Cubs were kind of asked about that, and I'm like, we're working on that right now. He's got a lot of work to do behind the plate, just telling you. To be an everyday guy. He's a really good hitter. He's got great hands, makes contact, can hit for power. He'd be a good left-handed bat in the lineup right now for the Cubs. But the problem is you put him behind the plate. Guys are running all over the place. He misses balls. It doesn't block great. So he's got to do a lot of the basics. How patient are the Cubs with this? And we saw it with Kyle Schwarber, who Schwarbs was there. And it was like, they gave up on it so fast because Madden wanted him in the big leagues to hit. And it worked out. I mean, the guy's still hitting, but he never really panned out as a catcher. So, we'll find out. I think that if the Cubs are going to spend some money or they're going to make a trade, if they could get a big-time catcher, and there's not many of them in the game anymore, it would help. I'm telling you, it would make this team a lot better. A guy that could hit and catch. A guy that was a leader. Somebody that was tough-nosed. I think that's what they really need. Honestly, to be honest with you, a David Ross type of guy. When we had Wilson Contreras, I thought having Rossi back there maybe he wasn't your everyday guy, but just having him back there for his brain. And since you got young guys as your backups, you got to have the older guy as your starter. But that's the way I'm looking at it right now. I'm still really interested as the pieces kind of fall in place on this offseason. We'll start looking at what mid-level means. What does mid-level free agents look like for the Cubs, and when do they start signing people? I would pay attention, though, to trades. I really do think that the Cubs are at a point where, with this front office being on a short leash, they're going to have to make some decisions based on keeping their jobs and this game plan that they've put together, where they're going to have to move some pieces in Matt Shaw and Owen Casey, James Triantos. Those guys, to me, are, if I was another organization and had a chance to get them, would make a trade. Maybe even trade Pete Crow Armstrong, for the right fit, and you're taking a risk there. But that's kind of where we are right now with this offseason, and we'll keep an eye on it as we move forward. But, guys, thanks for hanging out. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up, hit the bell, do all those things. And thank you for being here as we talk Cubs baseball. We try to do it on a daily basis. There's not always something to talk about. So sometimes I just get on here and pick something and we just kind of chew on it. Also going to bring Naren back. We're going to talk about some things as well. I love his perspective, man. He's a huge Cubs fan, and he's someone that kind of brings that analytical look to the channel. So thanks. Go Cubs.